You've heard me talk about this friend of mine before, but this week my very atheist friend called me, and we never seem to be able to have a conversation with that where he doesn't turn it and try to convince me how wrong I am in my faith and how God can't possibly exist. And during our discussion, I know he loves science, so I turned it to him and I asked him, how did the flowers develop that rely solely on bees to pollinate them before the insect that we know as a bee actually developed? Because one would develop to the niche that was created. Or if perhaps the bees came first, what were they surviving on if these flowers with pollen hadn't evolved to the point where they can create food from it? Well, he didn't really have an answer, but he did tell me, well, God didn't create it. That doesn't prove anything. So I said, all right, I agree to a degree. Faith takes faith and belief. But I did tell him, let's look at this from something I do know you understand. Let's look at it from physics. Now, don't worry, we're not going into a big physics class here. But I told him, if you remember, Bob, the first law of thermodynamics, it states that the universe cannot create nor can it destroy energy. Therefore, the universe had a beginning point where energy and matter were created by something outside of itself. And the second law of thermodynamics states that energy naturally will, without exception, move from a place of greater concentration to a place of lesser, until finally it creates throughout the entire universe a state of thermodynamic equilibrium. A lot of words. Meaning, essentially, there will come a point in the far future where no energy at all in the universe can move from one place to another. Which essentially means for us that energy stored in a tree cannot be broken down and reused by other plants or animals. The energy stored in the billions and billions of plankton in our oceans cannot move up the food chain until it finally comes to nourish us. What all that means is the universe will eventually reach a point where life is unsustainable. This much he agreed with. So I told him, eventually, all of this proves to me that the universe was created from a beginning point, from a source outside of itself. And ultimately, there will be an end. Interesting enough, the Bible tells us God created the universe at a specific point in time from outside its boundaries with just a word. And the Bible also tells us in the book of Revelation that God will ultimately end the universe and create a new heaven and a new earth. He still argued with me. But I told him that the more science and physics comes together and explains the workings of our universe, the more science is pointing toward God. So let us pray this morning.